Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us here at aTyr Pharma's channel. Just want to let you all know what we're going to be doing with this video series. We'll be talking about the company. We'll be talking about the industry. We'll be answering your guys' questions, so don't be afraid to send them over to us. We'll, of course, be introducing members of the team. So who better to kick us off for video number one than Dr. Sanjay Shukla, President, CEO, and Director of the company. Sanjay, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing pretty well myself. And again, I feel like the best way to start is to build rapport with you a little bit, let people know who they're talking to, right? So first and foremost, tell me about your past experience before getting involved with aTyr Pharma.
Sure. I'm a drug development physician with about 25 years of experience at both large pharmas and also biotech companies. I also have a unique background that I also have a degree in biostatistics. Add all that up, I don't think there's that many comparable colleagues of mine as CEOs of biotech companies, being a physician, scientist, and a biostatistician. I started in the industry in the early 90s, working early on a Listerine toothpaste product at Warner Lambert. So I've worked at consumer healthcare stuff. To my next project was brain cancer. I was at Schering-Plough, worked on the first and only successful candidate that's ever been approved. That's temozolomide for glioblastoma, a really difficult condition. And I've always been interested in looking at rare diseases. Spent time at Roche in Nutley, New Jersey. Went to Espriva, had a really great experience there working in lupus, myasthenia, and that was a Canadian company based in Victoria, British Columbia, that was acquired about 15 years ago. And then most recently, before coming to aTyr, I was at Novartis working in global out of primarily the Basel headquarters, more in late stage, focusing on some of the late stage brands, trying to help them get approved, and then starting some of the phase 4 work. Two brands I worked with quite a bit were Cosentyx and Gilenya. So wide experience. I like to be functionally versatile. And I like to be really data oriented. That's kind of my background.
Yeah. Sounds like you have some pretty robust experience there. So I'm curious, Sanjay, well, what set you down this path? What is in this for you that makes you tick? What's the spark?
I've always been really interested as a data scientist. Even before I became a physician, I was a data scientist. I had an informatics and biostatistics background. So I've always very much been data oriented. And before there were things like big data, I was studying small data and small data sets. As I advanced in my career, I got interested in clinical medicine and actually had two careers. I was in pharma, then I went to medical school, then I came back to biotech and pharma. So a very atypical journey. Throughout that whole time, I've always been interested both in clinical medicine and also on the pharmaceutical science side in rare disease. I think looking for areas where we need better drugs that really change and disease and don't just sort of work on the fringes. So this is why I've been involved in diseases like brain cancer, myasthenia, lupus, now sarcoidosis. This is something that's always made me tick to really say, how do we get better drugs that really make a meaningful difference to patients in conditions that really need new and better therapies.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, we definitely need a lot of these problems addressed, and we need new drugs on the market right now. And I'm curious. So now looking at your background with aTyr Pharma, you went from consultant all the way up to where you are now as president and CEO and director. So how did the relationship start, and what made you decide to fully commit to now where you're at the helm of the ship here?
Yeah, it was a bit of an interesting start. I was familiar to some of the management team and had recently moved from my position at Novartis to San Diego. And the opportunity to first off join a Paul Schimmel founded company was really, really attractive, even in the early days as a consultant. Paul, for many of you, those watching this may not know Paul Schimmel, the name, but he is a transformative scientific entrepreneur that was first at MIT and for the last several decades has been out here at the Scripps Institute in La Jolla. And Paul has founded some rather giants in biotechnology, Alnylam, Cubist, Repligen, Alchemies, all of which are 5, 10, $15 billion market cap companies. So the opportunity to join aTyr, which he founded, about 12 years ago, was something really, really interesting because I knew Paul's science is really game changing,
Mhm.
and the ability to craft that science and try to create medicines from it was something that really compelled me to join. As I said, as you mentioned early on, as a consultant, as some of the management team and some of the board members knew of me, and I did join as chief medical officer early in my tenure, as there was a need there, and the company was really in need of someone to analyze data. So I started in a cubicle, helping the clinical team at that time look at data. Over time, I was fortunate to, I think, do a good enough job that some of the board members said, "Hey, we really would be interested to see if you would come on board full time." And after speaking to someone like Paul, it was an easy decision.
Wonderful. Okay. So I guess now that you're at the helm of the ship, walk me through what that looks like. Like walk me through a day in the life of the president, CEO, and director of aTyr Pharma.
Well, I very much rely on what I think is an excellent team that we've built over the last 5 to 7 years. But being a technician in a discipline such as medical science, I obviously play a pretty heavy hands-on role in our clinical work. I think that's the advantage of being a clinician who's also a CEO. I'm going to spend a lot of time managing and looking out around our clinical programs. But typically, what it involves is, at least at aTyr, a real focus on our lead candidate, which is efzofitimod, and ensuring that it advances. Early on, it was some preclinical work that I really needed to get shipshape before we got into translational studies, really understanding the mechanism, taking a logical and rational approach to drug development, which sometimes is not done in biotech, but I think creates a lot of risk in biotech if you aren't a little systematic. Some of the ways that I think I've de-risked the programs are looking at what works and investing in those signals that I believe can translate to eventual clinical success. And for things that are not tracking well, we basically try to shut it down. So that's another thing that I spend equal amount of time every day looking at our research work and saying, okay, this looks like it's tracking well. Let's move that forward. This doesn't look like it's actually tracking that well with the data, and try to be, again, very data oriented, unemotional, not romantic about particular diseases, things of that nature, and saying, this is how we actually should move things forward. I also spend quite a bit of time with the team because I do think, we operate outside of the typical biotech cults of personality. I really view the team as all leaders themselves, and aTyr is beyond just Sanjay Shukla. It is my management team, really what I think is an A+ group of individuals who focus on their disciplines. I'm there to support them, help them. If there's fires to fight, I jump in on that. But I also really rely on them and their expertise to perform. And I expect top performance.
Yeah, Doc. I mean, I agree with you. That's really the way to do things. It's more of an inverted pyramid approach where you are there to serve the team so they can best perform to their capabilities, and you want them to be significantly better than you in everything that they're specifically targeted at. So that's good. And kind of wrapping things up. We've touched on your past. We've touched on how you got involved with the company. We've touched on what your role looks like, and it does seem like you are kind of unique versus other CEOs to where like you actually have a much more intimate knowledge into what it is your company does. But to kind of wrap things up, what's like the one thing that you really want to get across to people in this video series?
I think the biggest thing and the takeaway with aTyr is fundamentally we are similar in with regard to many biotech companies, that we have a platform of what potentially could be a revolutionary new biology.
Mhm.
But I also think that our approach is very different. We approach things with a lot more, I would say, corporate and data humility.
Mhm.
We don't go out there and say this is going to cure thousands of diseases, as some of the companies do. That's just not fair to patients. Patients need to understand that you have an opportunity here. And I've always said things that says our drugs could be part of a toolkit here. Again, the data is going to guide me to say how much I believe in something. And when I think about aTyr, I think we have a wonderful biology platform that can potentially lead to multiple therapeutics to help different diseases. But we first got to show that one works, get it to well, we have gotten it to phase 3 now, but get it approved. And then I think we are well on our way of fulfilling the promise of this biology. So I think we approach things in a different manner. We don't try to hype things up. We follow the data. We put the data out there. And I'm most proud of, for example, experts like other pulmonologists saying, this is some of the best data I've seen thus far. It's really promising. That's more important to me than if I'm saying it, to the audience out there. So I think we are a little bit atypical in that manner.
All right. Well, listen, it sounds like we're going to have a lot we're going to be able to chat about. And up next, everybody, the next video we'll dive into is more of a general company overview. And of course, we really want your guys' feedback. So if there's anything you specifically need us to dive into, help you understand it a little bit better, don't be afraid to leave your questions below. But for now, Doctor, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for coming on. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Michael.